Welcome to Gamescom. We're here doing a quick Wildstar interview, and I've managed to somehow pull two of the devs into a small cubicle where they can't escape. Would you guys like to just quickly introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Nick Roth. I'm the technical design lead on Wildstar.
I'm John Weisman. I'm the lead client engineer and also the UI lead.
Cool. So do you want to just tell us a bit about what your job is before we ask some questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So the systems that we own are typically the under-the-hood systems that the content and the dungeon team and everybody uses to build Wildstar. So for example, is our public event system, which we use for arenas and battlegrounds and dungeons and raids and open world events as well.
Yeah, so that would be things like the way that contribution is kind of determined and those
Absolutely,
kind of analysis. Can you tell us a bit more about that, like in regards to the way contribution works in public quests that are kind of in the open world?
Sure. So depending on how the events are set up, the content team has the ability to use sort of our default under-the-hood participation system, which is measuring how much experience and also how much objective contribution you contribute to the event.
Yeah.
And then they also have the freedom to script their own contribution based on whatever they want to do.
So would player location or player proximity or kind of those kind of things be something that they could choose?
Yeah, absolutely. We can define the areas that count for the public event.
Cool. So as an example, the Tree of Life Drusera quest that was
the
put in.
Guardians of the Grove.
Yeah, that utilizes the public quest system.
Sure.
Yeah. So that would be able to determine, say, how close a player is before they start getting contribution to it, and then how much things like direct damage they dealt to creatures inside that area or healing, and then they would be able to say factor it so that healing was valued more than straight damage, or damage was valued more than healing. Those kind of things, would that be stuff they could do?
So Guardians of the Grove specifically is a large-scale group public event, and so our goal is that players will group up and take on the harder difficulty creatures. And so as you're grouped up with players and you're taking down those creatures, your contribution gets added for your entire group.
Okay. So do they have the ability to, even in the large scale ones, do they have the ability to essentially show it off for the group, and so it's just done on an individual basis rather than, say, a group? Like if I was to turn up to one of the, let's say you put in a new event, would you have the functionality to be able to put in that my contribution only counts for me, even if it's, say, a 20-man event?
Yeah, it's something that we try and tie the contribution towards the scope of the event.
Yeah.
So if we're doing sort of a large-scale, necessarily not scaling, but so like the Guardians of the Grove has a lot of group difficulty creatures, so like your 5-man group creatures or your 20-man group creatures.
Yeah.
Those ones we try and keep the participation tied to your group, so that you take down the creatures together and you participate together, and that's where your contribution comes from. For solo public events, for example, in Celestian, there's a public event with the Ravenous Mordesh. Your individual contribution is what's usually tracked, and the event actually can scale up to accommodate more players as well.
Is there any kind of systems in place to kind of prevent, say, idling or inactivity or trying to abuse the system? Like, say, for example, if I'm in a group with you two and we're killing something at the Grove, if I'm the one that's doing it all and you're just standing there, will you get the exact same contribution amount as I will, or will you get, say, a percentage of it because you were there and you were helping, but you weren't technically doing anything?
Sure. So if you're grouped with another player, we consider that's the unit that we're measuring around. So whatever your group mates do is your group's contribution. And so since you belong to that group, that's the credit that you'll earn. And that can be anything from, you could be running around building plants or whatever, or otherwise handling creatures, but you're not actually killing the creatures with your group. We still want to make sure that you get credit, regardless of how you're choosing to play.
So that kind of has pros and cons to it. Like, I mean, if I'm off picking up the plants and you two are taking down a boss creature or something, we're all going to be contributing our own way, and none of us are going to be penalized. But at the same time, it's up to the group to police itself and make sure that if someone's slacking, you kick them from the group.
Absolutely, yeah. And we want to make sure we're not too heavy-handed with it, because there are aberrant game styles or play styles where someone could just be doing something else, and we want to make sure that they don't get excluded from the group because they were helping us. We'd rather err on the side of caution there and make sure that they get credit.
Can we talk briefly about some of the new public stuff that's coming into Defile, if you know anything about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a brand new public event for 20-man in the Defile, and that's in addition to the new solo content and 5-man quest content. And so the Defile has the Siege of the Lightspire, which is the 20-man public event. And the Lightspire is where the entity has been imprisoned for the last 1,000 years. And the Strain are now trying to bridge across this Exonite field, which Exonite repels the Strain. And they're trying to make a bridge across that out of the Strain in order to free the entity. And so it's up to the players to group up and coordinate to progress through the event and take down the Dreadwatcher, which is a 20-man boss at the end of the event. And so there's 5 different stages. And the first stage is a series of bombing runs that players will group up with and coordinate their attacks to take down the Grimworms. And then after that, there's a set of holdouts. And the players will be defending a friendly unit as from the onslaught of the Strain. And there are 5 mini-bosses in the event that are called the Archfiends. And then they shut off some power sources and move on to the boss. And the boss is a full-on 20-man boss with multiple stages, and it's really exciting stuff.
One of the things that we actually got to check out, but one of the things that seemed quite interesting to me was on the first one, the bombing run that you do. You have to take out the exoganglia on the back of the big worms.
Good
nice
use of
word,
the terminology.
and I'm so glad I got that right the first time. But you can't do it on your own. They respawn too quickly. You need multiple players. So you would actually have to get a group of you to be like, okay, we're going to go do this. Focus this one.
Yeah, so this is an example of the group-oriented public events where solo players can help, but really you want to be coordinated with the other teammates in order to take down all the Grimworms.
The bosses for that, the guy at the end, seemed quite interesting. We got to check it out, and that was quite cool. But I'm more kind of intrigued by the setup of it. Like it just seems really interesting for it to be a public quest. Is that something that, like, Wildstar as a whole, you're really kind of focused on the whole, like, using the public quest system, making things out in the world rather than instance and tucking it away? Do you know?
So it's a little bit of both. Okay. Because we want to have something for everybody in the game. And players may be looking for that, like, large-scale group content, but they don't necessarily have the time commitment or the schedule restrictions to go into raids. And so this gives them a chance to sort of dip their toes in the waters of, like, larger-scale group content without having to go through and schedule raids and progress through those.
People seem more willing from experience to actually do pickup groups and things when it comes to outside content rather than if it's tucked away in an instance. They feel like they need to have, schedules and phone numbers for everyone and blood types and have everything predefined and go in. For the Lightspire one, do you know roughly how long you're kind of thinking it will take for length?
That's a good question. I think it depends on how coordinated the group ends up being. Okay. But, obviously you could end up spinning your wheels on the first phase if your group just can't get the coordination down. Yeah. And so it's a little bit variable on how good your group is.
It's kind of nice to see the events being out in the world rather than instance away, for the fact that it adds life to a server, and it keeps players actually seeing other people and seeing the people they're playing with. And also it has that wonderful kind of reputation builder that, because these things are focused on a server and they're not tucked away under cross-realm grouping and stuff, that you'll be like, I know that guy, I've seen that guy, we were with him at the 5-man. Oh, that's great, he's here at the 20-man, let's do this together. Yeah,
absolutely. It's one of those sort of core tenets of Wildstar, is that the more you group together with players, the more fun you end up having and the more lasting bonds you establish with other players. And it fuels itself, and it really kind of leads to a healthy MMO.
You've also got the great staging of it. Like, you've got the solo content, and then you've got the 5-man, and you've got the 20-man coming in Defile. So it's a case of, if you're running around doing the solo stuff and you run into someone, it might be a case of, let's group up and go do the 5-man. And then you're running around as a 5-man group, and you run into someone, and you're like, oh, let's go and do the 20-man.
Yeah. It's a really fun experience.
Is there anything you're really happy about personally in Defile, or something you really enjoy, like one of the quests or one of the areas, or?
No, I was just I like the bombing run. I just think it's fun.
I thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm actually excited about one of the changes that's coming up alongside the Defile patch in the new housing unlock system, so that instead of having to purchase your sky changes and wallpaper over and over and over again, it's now an unlock system, and you can just get it once and then go back to it whenever you want.
And there's music as well now.
And the housing music, yeah, absolutely.
Which everyone should just set the Proto-Star music, and that's it, you're done.
Yes.
Anyway, guys, thank you very much for giving us a moment of your time. I feel like John got away and didn't answer anything.
I'm a chatterbox, and I apologize.
Okay, well, let's quickly ask him a question. I don't know, how fast is the terminal velocity of a chewer if you're throwing it out of a cannon?
A European chewer or no? That's a good question.
Laden, unladen?
Unladen laden or unladen, right?
An unladen chewer.
An unladen chewer. As fast as the chewer wants to be, I think, is the answer.
You think they could like spread themselves out in kind of a wingsuit style?
Yeah. Actually, if I had meant it would be going very fast because I would have punted it because I'm exile. And so...
Dominion?
Of course.
Yeah.
Chewer for life.
Guys, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.